Imagine this, right? You're in the middle of the ocean, just chilling on your favorite warship. Personally, I'm gonna pick the HMS Hood, but you do you. Anyway, it's a nice sunny day, no ships in sight, no threat whatsoever. Then, out of the middle of nowhere, a giant black dot appears on the horizon. As it gets closer, it gets bigger and bigger until finally you can distinguish what it is. Floating before you is a literal rock, complete with a British flag, 6 guns, and a dock. As the rock gets closer and closer, it towers over your ship. Before you is the HMS Diamond Rock. Yes, you heard me right. It's a rock that is a commissioned British warship, or was a commissioned British warship. Now, first off, before I explain this stone frigate, as it's called, we need to take a deep dive into history. The year is 1803. The US is buying land. The steamboat is an up-and-coming new technology. And most importantly, everyone's favorite short French emperor was at war with the UK and the rest of the Third Coalition. Now, the War of the Third Coalition is something that, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know much about. But what I do know is that Napoleon, being Napoleon, wiped the floor of the Third Coalition. On land. Because Britannia rules the waves. Right, so with that, our story takes us to the nice waters of the Caribbean. Specifically the island of Martinique. But we'll get into that in a minute. Now, France owns some stuff in the Caribbean. And since France is at war with Britain, the Brits need to do some blockading. Now, I'm going to quickly go over some territories that France owns in the Caribbean. Now, first we have the Louisiana Territory, and we could take that out of the picture because the US bought that from France. Haiti can also be taken out of the picture due to their rebellions. This leaves us with a handful of islands and some other territories that really aren't important to this story. Right, so with that, let's look at our temporary main character, Commodore Sir Samuel Hood. Now, Hood was in charge of a small, shall I say, task force of ships responsible for locking down the Caribbean. He was in command of his flagship, HMS Centaur, a 74-gun third rate, another unknown ship of the line, 6 frigates, and a handful of some smaller vessels. A quick introduction for those who don't know would probably be best. A third rate is a type of ship classification like a destroyer or a cruiser, but for the age of sail. It is a classification given to any ship that has between 64 to 80 guns. And if you don't know, that is a lot of guns. Anyway, I guess I'll get into the prelude of our story. HMS Centaur was in port at Fort Royal when a French schooner, much like the one shown here, and a sloop arrived. Deciding to run, HMS Centaur soon gave chase, signaling one of her escorts, HMS Sarah, after the sloop. A chase then ensued between HMS Centaur and this schooner, which resulted in the capture of the schooner, as well as the recovery of 8 cannons that had been thrown out of the ship during the chase. The schooner was found out not to in fact be a French warship, but a French privateer named Ma Sophie. Ma Sophie was put under the service of Hood as a supply ship, and was under the command of Lieutenant William Donnet. Now, when the Centaur and the rest of the Hood's task force were watching the channel between a certain island/rock, that'll be important in a minute, and the French island of Martinique, Lieutenant Donnet would make several trips to said island/rock of certain importance, where he would collect brooch-leaved grass, which he would weave into hats for sailors. He would also collect a spinach-like plant called callo, which provided a nice change in diet for the sailors of Ma Sophie and the Centaur. With my prelude/exposition done, let's get into why you clicked on this video. The British needed a presence on the island of Martinique, and the island/rock named Diamond Rock provided just that. Standing at 574 feet or 175 meters high, Diamond Rock is a volcanic plug formed about 1 million years ago. Located 3 kilometers away from Point de Mat, on Martinique, Diamond Rock provided a very suitable location for a fort to oversee the nearby shipping lanes entering and passing Martinique. Diamond Rock was surrounded by extremely deep waters, making anchoring close to the island a difficult task. This was, with the exception of a coral reef patch located about 3/4 of a mile away from the island, where the depth was around 30 to 40 feet. In addition to this, Diamond Rock was mostly cliff, with the only exception being a narrow, slippery incline into the ocean that was covered in seaweed, located on the northwest side of the island. Not helpful in this area is also the fact that the waves have a tendency to repeatedly slam into the incline, making, anchoring a ship very difficult. Also not helpful was the fact that diamond rock would become extremely hot during the day, so much so that touching the rock would be a not-so-fun experience. This was such a problem that during the construction process, which I'll get into in a minute, the British had to repeatedly pour water on the rock to cool it off. And so with this plan, Hood set off for the island to scout it out. On arrival at Diamond Rock, Hood dispatched his first lieutenant, James Wilkes Maurice. The landing party led by Maurice soon landed on the giant rock in the ocean. After a few hours of exploring, they discovered that the rock's caves were larger than expected, and were, in fact, dry. Perfect conditions for storing ammo as well as being perfect for crew quarters. A route to the summit was soon found, and ladders were constructed along the rock face. Sappers were soon brought ashore to introduce Diamond Rock to some fine Swedish engineering and innovation. After that, carpenters would also come ashore to construct a landing area. Upon the completion of the rapid scheduled disassembly and expansion of Diamond Rock's caves, hammocks and tents for the officers were placed in said cave. A galley, forge, and water christen were then constructed. Now, in terms of armaments, Maurice and Hood intended to fortify the island with several gun batteries. The first of which would involve moving the three 24-pounder guns from the HMS Center onto the island. This feat was achieved by attaching a 40-foot rope to the island and to the ship. The guns were then carefully hoisted from the ship up to the island. During the operation, the HMS Centaur played host to a German-born painter named John Eckstein. He was really a sculptor and engraver, but I digress. Anyway, during the process of lifting these guns, Eckstein was put on a rowboat and sent off to find a better vantage point. Once he did that, he painted the men on the Centaur moving guns from the ship to the island, on a rowboat. I mean, imagine trying to paint on a tiny rowboat in the middle of the ocean. I couldn't do it. Anyway, two of the 24-pounder guns were positioned just above the sea level, facing different approaches to the island, while a third, named Hood's Battery, after you-know-who, was positioned in a cave 60 meters up the cliffside. Why he named a gun battery after himself, I have no clue. I'm going to sum it up to British being British. Two 18-pounder long guns were positioned at the top of the summit as well. On March 1st, 1804, the final guns were put in place, and the island was stocked with 4 months of provisions for 120 men. Hood made one final inspection and left the island, leaving Lieutenant Maurice in charge of the island. However, before Hood left the island to do Hood things, he did two things. The first thing is quite strange and requires some brief explanation. See, the Royal Navy cannot rule over land, and this principle has existed and still exists today. It is this reason why many Royal Navy facilities, such as naval stations, training facilities, and even headquarters buildings, have the 3 letters HMS in front of their names. With that said, if you wanted to build a fort on an island and you just so happen to be building it in the name of His or Her Majesty the King or Queen of Great Britain, then you must commission said fortress on an island into what is called a stone frigate. Thus, what would in any other navy be just the fort of Diamond Rock is now His Majesty's ship Diamond Rock, a commissioned slope of war of the Royal Navy of Great Britain and her colonies. The second thing Hood did was decided that Maurice was going to be the commander of this island/rock/fort/warship, and with that Hood took his leave. Life aboard the 6-gun warship/fort HMS Diamond Rock was surprisingly much like one aboard an actual moving British warship. This was in part due to the way Commander Maurice ran the place, which was that he ran it like an actual movable warship. Maurice conducted regular inspections of the crew as well as gunnery and musket drills on a regular basis. In addition to this, Maurice divided the ship into watches, much like on a normal warship. Diamond Rock's official duties, and thus the duties of its crew, were inspecting passing ships. With 40 miles of visibility on a clear day, Diamond Rock's crew performed their duties diligently. If an enemy warship passed or came near Diamond Rock, the crew would pass the information on to St. Lucia and any nearby British warships. If any said British warships passed, their crew were expected to stand at attention on the quote-unquote deck of the ship or its summit and salute the passing ship. Diamond Rock, like a normal British warship, had a bell. Yay! British personnel, which included both sailors of the Royal Navy as well as a group of Marines, would play cricket in their off time. These games of cricket would be played inside Diamond Rock's caverns. The crew of Diamond Rock would make trips to the island of Martinique, where they would buy fresh fruits and fish. However, like a desert storm, or literally anything else beautiful and good, all things must come to an end. And unfortunately for the crew of the HMS Diamond Rock, it just so happened that everyone's favorite 5'6" French dictator's wife, Josephine, was born on the island of Martinique. Subsequently, she had family and friends on the island. This fact would soon attract the attention of the man himself, who would grow impatient with the stubborn HMS Diamond Rock. And with the ship not looking like it would be leaving for another few million years, it was time for the French Navy to do French Navy things. Like not staying afloat. Unfortunately, they did stay afloat, and in 1805, a combined Franco-Spanish fleet managed to win a game of hide-and-seek with the British and soon found themselves in the Caribbean. They did this because Vice-Admiral Vice-Admiral Villain, who was in command of this fleet, had been given orders to kick the British off the island at all costs. Unluckily, around the same time of the fleet's arrival, the crew of Diamond Rock discovered a crack in their main water tank, which was thought to have come from a small earthquake. The situation got worse when the British, in their infinite wisdom, decided to shoot a group of passing enemy warships. All this resulted in the British having to ration water to 1 pint a day per man. Now, around this time, the French and Spanish had decided the best action was to blockade Diamond Rock. This, along with no water, meant that the British had to start running the blockade. Attempts to sneak past the blockade resulted in capture, and the attempt was soon abandoned. All of this led to the Battle of Diamond Rock. On May 31st, 1805, Vice-Admiral Villain moved 16 ships and 11 longboats carrying troops to seize the Rock of Diamonds. On arrival, 2 hours of French naval croissant throwing commenced, during which Diamond Rock's gunners destroyed 2 French longboats. For those following at home, that's 2 British and 0 French. However, the bombardment of Diamond Rock soon resulted in Commander Maurice ordering the crew of the ship, HMS Diamond Rock, to abandon the waterline guns as well as destroy the landing platform and retreat to the inner caverns. Hundreds of French troops descended upon Diamond Rock under musket fire from the garrison/crew of Diamond Rock. At the same time, 2 74-gun French warships maintained fire upon the island, limiting the ability of the upper guns to provide fire support. The battle lasted 3 days, surprisingly, in which the crew of His Majesty's ship Diamond Rock defended her bravely. They fought until dehydration, exhaustion, and a nearly empty supply of ammunition caused them to not be capable of listing their muskets. At this point, Maurice consulted his officers, and the British soon surrendered. Maurice soon threw out a white flag, and terms were agreed upon, and the British soldiers, now POWs, were brought water. It is believed that during the entire battle, only 2 British soldiers lost their lives, while accounts of French casualties differ from 50 to over 100. With the British on Diamond Rock captured and the now POWs of the French Empire, Vice-Admiral Villain and the Franco-Spanish fleet embarked on round 2 of their game of hide-and-seek with Admiral Nielsen and the British Atlantic Fleet. Years later, Commander Maurice would find himself in a British port under a court-martial for surrendering his post. However, he would soon be acquitted as he had defended the island against a superior force. After this, Maurice would continue his naval career, serving aboard another stone frigate of unknown name. He would eventually reach the rank of Rear Admiral. As for Diamond Rock, it would remain in French hands until the invasion of Martinique, where it would once again be under British control. In 1815, however, it was finally traded back to the French, where it has remained since. So you might now be asking, have there been any more of these rock warships, or stone frigates as they're called? Well, due to the fact that the Royal Navy cannot control land, most Royal Navy facilities are commissioned ships in the Royal Navy. A prime example of this would be HMS Saker, a stone frigate located in the United States that has moved locations several times. It is the main administration building of the Royal Navy in the United States. Currently, HMS Saker is based in Washington, D.C. Or HMS Sultan, a shore base located in Gullsport, Hampshire, dedicated to the training of the Royal Navy's engineers. It's slated to close in 2029. Another example would be HMS Dartmouth, or the Britannia Royal Naval College, which is the Royal Naval Officers Training Academy. There are a lot more than just the few that I mentioned, and I encourage you to look up the rest and do your own research if you want. Right, so before you leave to go watch a much funnier and probably more informative video on something else, I have a few channel announcements to make. The first one would be that you need not expect a video from me until around February or so. That is, of course, assuming that the US does not go to war with anyone during that time. Anyway, this gap in videos is because I have 2 videos planned for the beginning months of 2024. It will be rather long and informative, and research is required for both, and I'm talking a lot of research. I will now remind you that this channel is a hobby channel, and there is currently no need for me to post monthly or routinely. Second, on a more personal note, I will be getting braces very soon, so fair warning, my voice will sound pretty bad. Just warning y'all, my voice is going to sound pretty bad. Finally, third, since it's overshadowed Ukraine, and at this point, it's not worth it not sharing my opinion on this, and please note the keyword opinion. I am not an expert. I have no military or military intelligence background. Anyway, this conflict has been ongoing for thousands of years. It will not end with the destruction of Hamas. It will not end with the destruction of Israel. It will not end with a peace deal. No nation can stop this. It is... how do I have to put this? Do I have to explain to the world, like your little school children? It is a conflict. When 2 people fight each other, and they really, really hate each other, I'm rocking really hate each other, they are not going to stop. I mean, these 2 countries, these 2 peoples, these 2 cultures, whatever you want to say that they are, have been fighting and bickering and arguing and going to war for longer than I can remember, longer than I care to look up. That's how long. Longer than I could probably even look up at this point, because it just goes back so far. I'd like to say that no side is objectively good. They've both committed war crimes, they've both done terrible things, and they're both kicking the out of each other. And that's what they do. That's what war is about. I'm going to go ahead and say one side is a terrorist group. So I'm going to side with Israel on this issue. If you need me to explain to you why I'm going to side with the non-terrorist group, then I would suggest... I don't know what to suggest to you at this point. Anyway, right now, as of October 25th, when this script was being written, it is now October 31st, so happy Halloween. Late, I guess. I don't know when this video is coming out. The most advanced aircraft carrier in the world, along with another aircraft carrier, the USS Eisenhower and the USS Ford, being the most advanced aircraft carrier in the world is the USS Ford, and their escorts and their air wings are currently off the coast of Israel. For context, for anyone who doesn't know, that's basically like the U.S. just put... How can I describe this? The U.S. just put 2 air bases, the equivalent of half a navy, an entire air force, just off the coast of Israel, nonchalantly, and we have more. Oh, we have a lot more. Anyway, the United States 26th Marine Expeditionary Force has been recalled from Kuwait and is currently en route to God knows where. Probably just going to sit there off the coast until needed. Some other news. China has sent some warships, but not any aircraft carriers, because they don't have any aircraft carriers that can go that far. Gaza is currently being bombed to hell and back, and the world has forgotten about Ukraine, which is something that concerns me. I'm not going to lie. This is because ultimately, what I believe is that Israel and Hamas's war is one of counterterrorism, and Ukraine's is one of independence, and to fight for sovereignty over themselves. It's a fight for freedom, for the Ukrainian culture, its people, and their home, whereas Israel's war is more of a response to Hamas attacking them once more. This time with more bravo, shall I say. That's not to say that either war is less important or negligible. At the end of the day, I and others may analyze and study war, but lest we forget that war is and always has been the most destructive and inhumane action one can bring upon a people. Anyway, this video is being recorded on Halloween, so little fun fact about me. I do not like Halloween. I hate Halloween. Halloween is my least favorite holiday. I don't like scary things. I don't like horror movies. And here down where I live, it's pretty cold around this time. It really depends. Honestly, you could flip a coin and it's either cold or hot. If that tells you anything, I'm happy for you. Candy's nice. Unfortunately, I'm too old to do trick-or-treating, and nor do I want to. I mean, just go out to some stranger's house, get their candy, you know what I mean? Like, not my thing. Not my thing. Anyway, I think that's all I really wanted to say. So until next time, have a wonderful Thanksgiving for anyone living in the United States. And unless I post between now and then, I hope not. You better hope not, because that'll mean the U.S. is at war, and that'll mean a lot of people are getting warheads on foreheads, and that's not fun. Have a happy/Merry Christmas wherever you are, and that's it. Go away now.